All right. So I'm going to go ahead and call the business meeting of the Portland Board of Public Education to order. It is Tuesday, September 19th, 2023. We are meeting in a hybrid format with some of us here at Casco Bay High School and some online via Zoom. Vice Chair Bondo, Board Member Billiou, and Board Member Figdor are all going to be online tonight. Deputy Superintendent Townsend, will you please call the roll?
Yes. Good evening, everybody. Member Billiou.
Yes.
Vice Chair Bondo.
Present.
Member Bryden.
Here.
Member Figdor.
Here.
Member Grant.
Here.
Member Opperman.
Here.
Member Russell Better.
Here.
Member Youssef. Walking in the door. Member Ellis.
Here.
Member Hemon. Here. Member McLaughlin. Member Santiago.
Here.
Chair Lentz.
Here. And now we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Portland Public Schools recognizes the original inhabitants of the land on which our city and schools stand. The Wolastoqiyik or Maliseet, Micmac, Penobscot, and Passamaquoddy tribes, known collectively as the Wabanaki Confederacy, or people of the Dawnland. We are honored to have Wabanaki children among our students today, and as the district, we are committed to making the past, present, and future of the Wabanaki peoples visible in our schools and classrooms. And I'm so excited tonight that we're going to get an update on the rollout of our Wabanaki curriculum across the district. Additionally, I'm just adding a bit to the agenda tonight, which is I'm going to start regularly reading our mission and our vision out loud at the beginning of every board meeting to just remind us why we're here and the work at hand. So our vision is that all leaders will be fully prepared to participate and succeed in a diverse and ever-changing world. And our mission of the Portland Public Schools, we're responsible for ensuring a challenging, relevant, and joyful education that empowers every learner to make a difference in the world. We build relationships among families, educators, and the community to promote health development and academic achievement of every learner. I'm now going to move us into public comment. As a reminder about public comment, members of the public may speak on any subject directly related to operations of the schools, except for personnel matters or complaints concerning specific employees or students, which shall be addressed through established policies and procedures. If an item is on the agenda tonight, please use the public comment time associated with that item as opposed to this public comment time. Comments are limited to a maximum of 3 minutes or 6 minutes for individuals using an interpreter to make their comment. Individuals may not relinquish a portion of their allotted time to another speaker. The board may not respond to any comments, and please refrain from responding in the audience. Speakers must refrain from engaging in disruptive conduct, including, but not limited to, using vulgar and/or obscene language, threatening others using words by other actions, using pejorative or discriminatory language with reference to a person or a group on the basis of their religion, ethnicity, nationality, race, color, descent, gender, or other identity factor, making defamatory comments, exceeding the allotted time limits, taking over or interrupting others, offering repetitive comments, and offering comment on matters unrelated to the school district's programs, policies, or operations. I say all of this because in the city of Portland and all around the country, there's been ongoing hate messages being delivered through public comment, and we will not hesitate to shut down public comment. It is not something we are mandated to do, and the protection of our students and community is of utmost importance. So given that, I will stop any public comment that is contrary to these rules. To give public comment, please come forward to the podium or raise your hand in Zoom. Please begin by introducing yourself with your name and address, and we'll alternate between Zoom and in person. I'll keep the time and give you raise a yellow folder indicating that you have 30 seconds remaining. I'll raise a red folder signifying the end of your time. If you get to the end of your allotted time and would like to request more time, you may do so. So public comment is now open. If you'd like to speak, please come to the podium or raise your hand in Zoom.
If anybody knows where the elevator in this building is, I'm welcome to that information later. Thank you. I tried, which is why I'm a few minutes late. I tried to find it. Can I have a minute to catch my breath?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I do see a comment, Julio.
But he doesn't know the new rules, but yep.
Yeah. The hand is raised. Yeah, you can feel free to come off of mute, Julio.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm yielding my time to Elizabeth.
He doesn't know the new rules.
Yeah. Julio, we actually have changed public comment rules in the last several months, and we no longer allow for time to be given to somebody else. But if you would like to speak, feel free to introduce yourself with your name and your address.
Julio Enriquez from Portland, Maine, 88 Talker. I think one of my topics have been blocked by your previous description, so I'm gonna have to just say that.
Would it be possible to remind him that he can speak generally instead of about himself?
Yeah, so as long as you're avoiding specifics about individuals, you're welcome to comment. But if it feels like your comments should be better directed in another venue, we will certainly talk to you outside of this meeting.
At this moment, I'm usually not a person that talks too much in these forums because coming from a different country and having learned English as a second language, I tend to hold a lot back. And so where I'm going with all this, I know I have limited time, is that I appreciate the culture, the diversity that Maine is trying to have, even though it's very low. Portland Public Schools, I have enjoyed some of the diversity with students and staff. I have also, I guess I'm going to wrap it up at that. I just wanted to say that when it comes to diversity, it's something that I like to be part of and proud to be in Portland and be one of those people, and therefore treat it as one. That's the end of my comment.
Thank you, Julio. Elizabeth, are you ready?
Hi, good evening. My name is Elizabeth Capone-Newton. I live on Tucker Ave, and I'm a parent of 2 Portland Public School children and the partner of a person struggling to continue to be a Portland Public School employee who just spoke. Sorry, new superintendent, that this is how we're meeting, although I came here to talk about my hopes for how everyone can walk the talk of the Portland Promise. I think the Portland Promise belongs to all of us. And I think that it's really important for there to be, for it not to be an elite access type thing, to have input into what it means to actuate or put in action the Portland Promise. And I am disappointed to hear the change in the rules, much less so about the yielding of time, and more so that it sounds now a lot more similar to the city council's rules. And I guess I'll save my comments for that about, about that for another time. It's sort of like children being unruly, right? We're not curious about the need behind the behavior. Just stop doing that. And yeah, it was interesting sitting in central office this morning and like Julio said earlier today, looking at the picture of Javier Botana on the wall, and more especially the quote of Martin Luther King Jr. on the wall about that education is about critical thinking, which is intelligence plus character. So yeah, my hope for all of you in your board level role, and for the superintendent and the deputy superintendent and all the upper management, various directors, is that everybody think about what is your role from your place and your position in making sure that all staff are respected, and that the early bird doesn't get the worm, when our own analysis of structural racism is that white people tend to be the early bird and middle upper class people tend to be the early bird, right? So, I just wish for everybody to dig in to what is within their power to do well by people. Can you remind me if that's 30 seconds?
30 seconds.
Okay, great. So obviously I thought I would have a little bit more time, but it's all good. I'll just leave it with that if your next meeting is in 2 weeks, I hope we'll be back with a lot more people who've been directly affected by the challenges here. On a different note, if you would like to have the filter for the whole evening, it's a Corsi Rosenthal, I think they call it, box. It prevents the spread of COVID. So I can come back for it later if you want. It's up to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. If there's anyone else here for public comment, please feel free to. Would you mind turning the music off, please? Thank you. If there's anybody else here that would like to come forward for public comment, please do so or raise your hand on Zoom. Okay, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close public comment and move on to my, Andy, you weren't getting up for public comment. Okay, sorry, I couldn't tell, changing your body language. I'm going to move on to my remarks. So I come in today with really mixed feelings. I am, on one hand, really happy to report that the school year has really started with some great successes. It has been so wonderful to hear stories from the community about students going back eagerly into classrooms, excited and ready to learn, as well as anecdotes about pre-K students and kindergarteners who are in their classrooms really trying hard to figure it all out. The warmth of our staff and educators have brought to these first 2 weeks, along with their determination to respond quickly to issues and solve problems to create the best experience for all families, has been tremendous. And I'm incredibly grateful for everyone and the ways that they have welcomed our students and community into our schools. Thank you all. Along with that happiness, though, I am really bringing in some sadness into this meeting about the events that unfolded at Casco Bay High School and Paths yesterday. We're so lucky that what took place was unfounded and ultimately a hoax, but the reality is that our climate that our schools currently exist in is extremely problematic. According to the Sandy Hook Promise, an organization that really does great work around gun violence, they have statistics on their website, and I'm just going to read a few, which is each day 12 children die from gun violence in America. Another 32 are shot or injured. Guns are the leading cause of death among American children and teens. A leading cause. 1 out of 10 gun deaths are age 19 or younger. In fact, firearm deaths occur at a rate more than 5 times higher than drownings in this country. And since Columbine in 1999, more than 338,000 students in the U.S. have experienced gun violence at school. That's just at school. These statistics are staggering, but they are the reality. And I'm incredibly grateful to all of our staff and educators who took such good care of our students and each other yesterday. I'm grateful to the Portland Police Department for their quick response and to all the caregivers who worked within the district to keep their students safe and to welcome them home at night. Superintendent Ryan Scallon will give more of an update when we move into his section of the presentation tonight. But again, just want to reiterate thanks to everyone that was involved yesterday. The next meeting that we have, I will be bringing back some reflections from a board retreat that was held over the weekend where the board met to talk about our values as a board, the norms in which we hope to carry out our work and our priorities for the year, which will ultimately be aligned with the district's priorities as well. So I look forward to bringing that to you at the next meeting. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Student Representative Joe Ellis for their update of Casco Bay High School.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, board and members of the public. I just want to offer a quick reintroduction since it's been a while. My name is Joe Ellis, and I am currently a junior at Casco Bay High School, and I serve as the student representative for CBHS here on the board. I know school only started 2 weeks ago, but I just want to provide a few brief updates on how we're doing so far. Before school started, we actually had a very successful summer bridge program for our incoming ninth graders. This is a 2-day activity-filled program meant to help make the transition into high school a little easier for those students. Tours were given, t-shirts were made, and of course, the unavoidable Chromebook issues were solved. To say the least, this new orientation process definitely helped ensure a very smooth start to the school year. And I want to say a big thank you to all the staff and students who came in early to help out with that. On to the actual first day of school. The AC may have been broken, but Mr. Pierce's enthusiasm was not. Students were welcomed back into the school on September 6th, and CBH staff were so excited to have them back in the classrooms that you just had to question what was in their coffee that morning. Classes started the next day and have quickly picked up speed since. Students are already learning about things like the power of a story, what it means to resist oppression, and how climate change affects the Colorado River. This is just the beginning, though. All sorts of different, more extensive expeditions will kick off in the next couple of months, and I'm so excited to tell you about those in the future. On the extracurricular side of things, our mock trial team has begun its season. X-Block, our in-school club program, will be starting in October, and student leadership opportunities like community council and cabinet are already starting to meet. Quest, one of Casco's biggest back-to-school traditions, is coming up. Quest is an overnight outdoor adventure that both the freshmen and seniors get to experience. In freshman year, it's a chance to bond with your crew and think about what kind of person you want to be in high school. And then for seniors, it's usually a longer, more adventurous trip, and it gives them an opportunity to reflect on high school as a whole. Seniors leave for Quest tomorrow. They were supposed to leave today, but and freshmen will be going next week. So let's all hope for nice weather. Lastly, as I'm sure many of you all know, thanks to Chair Lentz's wonderful reports, yesterday there was an active shooter threat at Casco Bay. Thankfully, it turned out to be a hoax and everyone is safe, but that does not change the fact that yesterday at 9:30 a.m., I felt scared to be in school, a place that should be nothing but safe and secure. Tragically, this is not uncommon. Gun violence is our reality. I will also say that as we evacuated, I felt unprepared and panicked because of the lack of background that we as students have in that area. In my past 2 years at Casco, I've had only one active intruder drill, and even that felt insufficient. So yesterday, I didn't know what we were supposed to do, who we were supposed to go to, or who we were supposed to talk to. I didn't know. I do want to say that the staff were absolutely amazing. They were calm, kind, and supportive through everything. But even with this, many of my peers and myself ended up acting in a panicked manner. So please let this be a reminder to everyone in the district that what we need right now is sufficient, safe, and well thought out training for situations like this. It's a complicated subject, and I know that there have been efforts made, but there needs to be more done. Safety should be our priority, and sadly, this is what safety looks like. The last thing we want for people to do is react rather than respond in situations like this. That is all from me. And thank you so much to everyone who has worked so hard over these past few weeks to get the school started.
Thank you, Representative Ellis. Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Scallon.
Just as, excuse me, Deputy Superintendent Townsend is pulling that up. Joe, I want to share a little bit of my reflection on the experience yesterday and the comments that you just made. And then I will also share a little bit of like the update in the comments, but I just want to like respond to what you just said. I think that sometimes we as adults and we as a district try to protect people's feelings and emotions and not always think through what's the experience going to be like when it feels real, when it is real. And I think that as we as a district have reflected on the experience yesterday, as well as on past years' experience, it is clear that we have been too concerned about how we may feel sitting in a training than about making sure that everybody is safe in a moment where there could be something that is a life and death situation, right? And so as a parent of a second grader, a fifth grader, and a seventh grader, I both understand not wanting them to go through the experience of having to shelter in place, but I would rather process that with them and have that conversation with them and be able to do that than to have a different kind of conversation. And so I think that what you're hearing from us and from me is that we're not where we need to be yet, and that we need to operate with a level of urgency. And we need to be comfortable communicating to everybody that we're going to lean into the uncomfortable because it is the right thing to do for everybody's safety and making sure of that. And so there are things that we have started to do around that. And so this summer, we did what is referred to as ALICE training for our leaders. And in almost all cases, leaders turned it around to their staff that Tuesday before school started. In a couple of cases, it didn't happen because of construction. And so there's been catch up on that. The second piece that we have done is we have changed the expectation about how often drills are run and the expectation that they happen. And just to be clear, that is not a nice to have, that is an expectation of which we will be holding schools accountable. Part of that is also communicating to families when those drills will be happening so that that conversation can happen. So a family can say to a child, this is what you experienced today, let's process that so that we are able to take care of the mental health and the well-being. And make sure that we have done the preparation, because the reality is that gun violence in schools is very rare, but when it happens, it is life and death. And so we need to be at a spot where we are prepared to handle that in a safe and appropriate manner. And we had not done previously the work around that we're working on now, and we're not there yet. With that, can you actually jump to slide, I think, 6? We'll do the update first on what happened at Casco Bay and Paths. Great. So I want to make sure that everybody in the community watching, joining us tonight has the information about what happened. So at 9:21, police received a text message. It turned out to be an unfounded text message, but the text message indicated that there was an active shooter at Casco Bay. Police reached out to the school to check and see if there was any information. and did engage in that process with our staff outside the building to start to have a conversation to understand what the situation was. But the truth is that police responded really fast and partnered with us in a very helpful way. So police received the text message at 9:21. By 9:23, police were outside the building and preparing to enter. Students were evacuated from the building, and it was determined that it was going to be some time before police would give the all clear for students to re-enter the building. And so students were then diverted to Moore. Moore is identified as their relocation plan, the relocation site in their plan. And so students were diverted there, where they were able to gather with their staff until either one of two things happened. Either some of them got picked up, which we're going to talk about in a minute, or they returned back to the school. At 11 a.m., police gave the all clear, and students did begin to transition back to Casco Bay. And additional staff were made available for both students and staff on Monday, as well as today, for those who may have needed additional time and support processing this. It's also the case, and I would encourage folks at Casco Bay or Paths or others in our community that were impacted by this, that they may feel impacted from it later on. There may be a trigger, and to let us know, let their school counselor, their school social worker know, and we can provide support. Throughout the situation, in what was a pretty scary situation, we had central office staff on site here working with and in coordination with school site as well as the police. We were able to communicate out, and so I'm sharing this with families so that they know how to get this update and this information. We did send communication in text, email, and with voicemail. And so we were able to send out all three of those. I think there were 4 messages. We also posted them on the district website so that anybody who needed update or information could see it all in one spot. If individuals did not receive those text messages, I ask that you please look at your contact information in Infinite Campus and follow up with the school to make sure that you receive those messages in a timely manner. And before it's asked, those messages are translated and available in the home language. I do want to acknowledge, as I shared before, that this was a very traumatic experience and very stressful. And so there is a sincere thank you that doesn't capture it, but appreciation for the work that staff did and that students did going through this experience. As I shared, the Portland Police Department was a partner in this work. They worked extremely hard to both keep us informed as well as to keep our community safe. And I want to thank the families who partnered with us in this to make sure that they had the information and were able to respond in this situation. I do want to ask, and one thing that we will do, we were fortunate that this situation was not an active shooter and that it wasn't real. One of the things that came up as a challenge is folks reaching out for information and calling. And so we've gotten feedback that our communication was pretty helpful in the moment, but for folks who we were not able to answer the phone or respond back immediately, we both apologize and hope that you understand that our priority was about the safety of individuals in the building at that time. And so in the future, we ask that in these types of situations, if you can just please wait to reach out or to communicate, it makes it safer for everybody. I actually suggest that why don't we pause here for a second, see if there are any questions, and then I'll do the rest of the update.
Great. Questions from the board? Superintendent Scallon, I know one thing we had talked about is kind of like where the initial communications are targeted. Do we target a single school or the general community? Could you explain kind of our thinking about that and what the process is so the community understands that as well?
Yeah, so the goal of this is to make sure that we don't have both misinformation and that we're communicating with those who most need the information in a timely and efficient manner. And so when we do this type of communication, we communicated directly to the schools that were impacted and then posted the information on our website so that those who were not as directly impacted could find the information. In fact, when they relocated to the Lyman Moore location, which is also right next to Lyseth, we did send out a communication to those two schools because of the additional police presence on their campus so that they would understand what it was for. But the intent is actually to share the information on our website so anybody who has or a question can see the same information, but we are targeting it specifically to those communities that are impacted so that they have the information they need in a timely manner.
That's awesome. And I would just request that anybody listening here tonight can, in instances like this, refer other members of your community to the website to get that information. Grace Venezuela and her team have rebuilt our website. It is so much more easy to use and get information. And the most important information is always on a carousel at the top of that website. So please, that is a great source of information that is constantly being updated. So just want to put that out as well. Board Member Opperman.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Kudos to all who worked hard yesterday. Something about might be useful is to say now what the HTTP is for the website, so people who are not, who are just listening, know how to get there. Portlandschools.org. Pretty
right.
simple, but it's just putting that in is important. Thanks.
Thank you, Board Member Opperman. Any other questions from the board? Vice Chair Bondo, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to come back to what the superintendent just mentioned about targeting families on the website. And I know a lot of multilingual families, they just don't know how to navigate the website yet. So I just wonder about how we spread the messages on the time manner so they can be aware, because some of them, they work or they're having double shifts, working on different schedules. So I just want to understand the way the multilingual office will navigate those kind of issues.
So Vice Chair Bondo, for families that are directly impacted, so families that have students at Casco Bay or PATS, they received updated communication in 3 manners. They received a text message, they received an email, and they received a voicemail or a voice message. All of those, I believe, except for maybe the voicemail, so the text message and the email both come in the language they identify on Infinite Campus. And so it was communicated that way. There's a reality, which is that all members of our community periodically change cell phones, periodically change the email that they check. And so I just encourage folks to make sure that the information is accurate, but that's the space in which we communicated it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Superintendent.
Thank you, Vice Chair Bondo. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, let's go ahead and keep moving. Ryan?
Yep. So I have updates tonight on 3 items beyond what we've already talked about. So I'm going to share a quick update on where we're at with our listen and learn process. We have some recognition of students and staff, including some students and staff that are sitting with us tonight. And then Deputy Superintendent Townsend and team will do an update on summer school. So as a reminder, we are in a 3-part process as we go through from listen and learn to our strategic plan to our budget. We are going through that this year. We are coming up to the end of our listen and learn. And after that, we will transition to a strategic plan that should help us refresh the goals as well as the actions that are embedded within the Portland Promise. And then we'll be working with the board and members of the community to make sure that we have an aligned budget to our priorities and our needs. This is just a quick update on the slide that I shared with you last week. or the last meeting. We have now at this point had 13 community-wide engagement sessions. You can see that we have 2 additional meetings scheduled, one tomorrow and one on Thursday in partnership with the Portland Housing Authority. We continue to have our survey open as part of the listen and learn process. The survey opened on September 5th and closes on September 22nd. If you are viewing this at home or in other places, you can find the survey both on our website as well as with this QR code. And I will be sharing themes and trends that come from 3 areas, really, probably 4, I guess, if you want to count it, but 3 new areas. One is the listen and learn sessions. The second is the survey. And the third is we are partnered at no cost to the district with Attuned, which is a national organization that supports strategic planning. And they, in partnership with Deputy Superintendent Townsend and executive directors, did classroom walkthroughs at, I believe, 12 of our schools to also triangulate this data on what's happening in the class. If you want to go. As we finish up and share out the trends from the listen and learn, we are transitioning to the steering committee or the strategic planning process. As part of that, we again want community engagement, and we are forming a steering committee that will provide support and input to our central office and our district leaders as we develop the strategic plan. And so we are looking for parents, students, district staff, community members, nonprofit leaders, business leaders, really trying to capture our whole community to sit on this steering committee. The first meeting of this committee is November 1st at 6 p.m. There are applications available on our website, as well as the QR code from the right. I'm really digging QR codes, evidently. Applications are open today and close on October 6th. And it's a really quick application, right? So we're just asking for name, resume, and just like a cover letter that captures why interest in the steering committee, because it is a little bit of a time commitment. And so we want to make sure that we are getting folks that will help us make sure that this strategic plan really aligns with the needs of the district and our whole community. And we will announce the members of that committee on September 17th. If you are interested in being involved but don't have the time to be a member of the steering committee, or just want less of a commitment, there will be focus groups in February to give feedback on the draft of the strategic plan at that time. If you want to jump. I'm also really happy to recognize the great folks that we have in our district. And so we could shout out every board meeting a handful of folks, and I'm happy to do that again this evening. First, I just want to recognize Barrett Wilkinson, who is our Executive Director of People and Equity, who will be presenting, I believe, this month at the Holocaust Human Rights Center of Maine and their annual meeting. And so just kudos to him and his team's work and the fact that it is getting recognized and getting shared in this manner. We also have, beyond great staff, we have amazing students, including Adrian Darlington, Caden Hemond, and Matan Schoenfeld. All 3 are PHS seniors, and they were all named recently as National Merit semifinalists. And so can we give a hand to them? I said it the first time I joined the district that what really made the district special was the people in it. And these 3 students and staff member are just 4 great examples of the people we have in here. In closing, I want to take a minute and recognize and wish a good holiday to all in our community who celebrate this past weekend, Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur, as it comes up on Sunday into Monday of this coming week. In addition, this month is Hispanic Heritage Month, a time to celebrate the cultures and contributions of Hispanic Americans. And so we wish that everybody is able to enjoy and embrace the contributions to our community. And then last, today is actually National IT Professionals Day. Bet you didn't have that on your calendar, but there you go. I shared it with you. And so just a big thank you to our IT technicians, engineers, and administrators for all that they do to support our students every day. They are, again, sort of the unsung heroes that are behind the scenes, making sure that when your Chromebook does break, it works again. And so thank you to them. That is the last of my comments, but at this point, I would like to welcome up Deputy Superintendent Townsend to share summer school update.
Great. And I'd like to invite the team. We have a number of folks who are instrumental in making summer programming happen this summer for our students in Portland. Excuse me. So I'm going to do, as they come forward, tonight's update is a brief update just on participation this summer. This is, still early in our process of kind of reconciling all the kind of academic and attendance and, deeper data analysis as it relates to our summer impacts, as well as the financials. But in recognizing summer's been a big investment for us, wanted to just provide a brief update this evening on the participation. So all in all, let me bring the presentation up. There we go. So I do want to recognize a number of folks who are here. I'm going to give some brief highlights, and then we have some folks available in case there are brief questions. But first, supporting the elementary programming, I want to recognize Jesse Robinson. Carol Hill was also an important coordinator for us on our summer programming. At the secondary level, we want to recognize Pamela Atuno, who coordinated a lot of our summer programs, intensives, the summer bridge programs. Want to recognize Julie Kirby, who's here. Julie is our assistant director for elementary special education, and really helped to lead our extended school year programming. And then last but not least, want to recognize Kate Hersom, who is our SRF program manager, grant manager, who is supporting all the back end parts of this work, as ASSERF has been the primary resource to support our programming. So in total, we were able to serve approximately 1,500 students this summer. At the elementary level, as we had shared at the outset, we were establishing partnerships with community programs to provide tutoring, focusing on serving our McKinney-Vento students in full-day programming. And so you can see here the range of programs that we offered and partners that we had. So highlighting in particular our partnership with Boys and Girls Club, as well as Learning Works, who serve significant numbers of our students, as well as Rec and Root Cellar. So we had nearly 500 elementary students that were able to participate in programming this summer. At the middle school level, similarly, the K-8 model was around community partnerships and tutoring. So we had a focus there as well on academic support in math and providing leadership opportunities. So in total, we were able to serve about 160 middle school students in our summer programming from a range of our middle schools, again, with a variety of different partners and different experiences for our middle school students. At the high school level, we had a few different kinds of programming happening. So there was some community-based programming, supporting social emotional development and leadership. So we had partners that we've partnered with over time, Cultivating Community, Seeds of Peace, Center for Grieving Children. So we had nearly 100 students that participated in that type of programming. Additionally, at the school level, as we have done for the past few years, have kind of evolved the historical kind of credit recovery model into a summer intensives model at all three high schools. So we're excited about the continued growth there this year in our kind of second full year of implementation of that summer model, where we had about 380 students participating in summer programming for those intensives. And then you can see the number of kind of multilingual students that we're able to serve in those programmings. Just under half of the students were students who were multilingual that were able to access our programming this summer. Additionally, as part of our focus on high school readiness and transition, as you heard about in Member Ellis's comment about the Summer Bridge program, the grade 9 work groups at each of the schools that's been a part of our high school design work, all designed and facilitated Summer Bridge Academy experiences to support identified students to be able to support their transition to high school. So in total, across all three schools, we had about 130 students participating in that program. And last but not least, in terms of programming, extended school year services are part of an IEP, part of the student's IEP who require special ed services over the summer. And so we had a range of programming happening for students in different programs, as you can see here, both resource level as well as students who may have higher needs in terms of supporting them, students in our life skills or beach programs, for example. So in total, we are able to serve, nearly 200 students, over 180 students in our extended school year programming. So we're excited about being able to continue to lift this. These numbers, again, are, much higher than our pre-pandemic numbers in terms of summer programming, slightly less than what we were, organized to serve last year. Last year, we served about 2,500 students. So this year, again, we're at about 1,500 students. So we're excited to be able to really follow through on, what we had intended in terms of programming for this summer, and excited to be thinking about, leveraging our last year of ESSERF programming for summer programming next year. So with that, I'll conclude our summer school update.
Do you want to open it up to questions?
Sure. Yeah.
Beautiful. Board members, does anybody have questions? Yes, Board Member Bryden.
Thank you, Chair. Can we go back to the Bridge Academy slide for a second? So if I'm understanding correctly, also I should say super, thank you so much for all this work. This is fantastic. But my question is about the Bridge Academy slide. If I'm understanding it correctly, every student coming into Casco Bay as a freshman gets recruited, but not every student as a freshman coming into DHS and PHS gets recruited. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So I'm curious about why there's that distinction.
Pamela, do you want to?
So given that this was our first year doing this, and to not, as an introduction and not to make it seem overwhelming, the ask of all the schools was to invite at least a certain percentage of their population and actually do some collaboration with the middle school, 8th grade teachers and to see which kids are in most need and need the support as they transition to high school.
Okay.
So there was 5 to 10% and invite, the students coming in. If you have the capacity to invite more, then go ahead and do so. But as a starting point this year, that was the expectation. Okay. And the intention is to build as we move forward further along.
And Casco Bay was we're ready.
Yes, Casco Bay was let's do this. Yeah.
And so next year and year after, the idea would be to invite everybody.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Yep.
Super. Thank you.
Oh, and could I ask one follow-up question while you're here? I was just curious if there's any learnings that you've had between enrolled and attended that of different practices that you might put in place for next year to get the attended numbers up.
Yeah, great question. So beginning of October, we have our first district-wide grade 9 team meeting, work group meeting, and that's one of the things we're going to be looking at and discussing that to see what do we need to change and what worked and didn't work. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Any other questions from the board? Vice Chair Bondo.
Thank you, Chair. Deputy, can we go back to the previous one just before the Bridge Academy? I think it's about, yes, thank you. Yes, no, the high school programs. There you go. Thank you. So I have just a clarification questions here. On the school-based program, with the learning recovery. Those are, when we talk about intensive, so it's something that the school has as a requirement. I just want to have a little detail what the intensive means on those different programs. We have math, we have different subjects. That one is because of some of the needs or some of the catching up of students that they just need to recover on those specific subjects.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so when they have that one recover, maybe those are more details coming up later on the data. I just want to understand those are going to the credits when they start school, or it's just something they have learned and nothing being credited to the following year or to the new year to the studying of the school.
Board Member Bondo or Vice Chair Bondo, you said for the intensive, those earn credits for students in terms of their progress towards graduation.
Well, is the earned credit? It is?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. And then for the multilingual student participation, those 146, they are all included for those different programs as well? Or that one is just a different participation on something else?
So that's taking into account the students that were in all the other programs. We're not counting the Bridge Academy. But one of the asks of all three high schools was that they actually create a program for our multilingual students. So each of the three high schools had a program for our newcomers. In addition to that, we also had multilingual students embedded within the intensives and credit recovery programs. So this is looking at the numbers of all the students that we were able to engage and capture and support during the summer programs.
Okay, maybe later on, can we know exactly a little more details what kind of program it was created for that specific students? It was what, literacy? Was some combination of just welcoming them or have a human relationship? So I just wonder what kind of programs then we build for those students.
Yeah, the multilingual specific programs at each of the schools, built into them were literacy and numeracy programs, as well as just welcoming and getting them familiar with the layout of high school. There were also field trips, right? So social settings and just social emotional well-being as well. That was built into all of that. So a combination of content, preparing them for, when they enter into high school again this year, but also setting them up to understand who their teachers are, what school is like, and get comfortable and familiar.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you. Maybe I missed that side. I mean, just for the elementary school, do we have anything creating for the newcomers, the multilingual, just on the beginning, I think? Or they were spread on different, like a boys and girl club or something else? Or we have some specific ones being creating for that population?
Yeah, so we partnered with community programs this year in lieu of providing programming at our individual schools, and for a number of reasons. But the students that went to the Boys and Girls Club, largely, I would say, are multilingual students, and we partnered with the Boys and Girls Club to provide a language tutoring program there, and you can see the numbers that we had there, and those were largely they were targeted towards our McKinney-Vento students that were at the expo at the time. And so, we hired some tutors we hired a coordinator, and then the Boys and Girls Club hired some tutors who were Portland Public School teachers. And we had a kind of a great partnership where they did the tutoring at the Boys and Girls Club, and we recruited the students or helped recruit the students and the staff to be there. Does that answer your question?
Yes. I think maybe I can have some follow-up later on to make sure how we measure the success of those programming, like, the tutoring, the language tutoring, and everything that we do with all our partners, how we are able to measure or evaluate the success.
Yep. And as we said, we're still early in analyzing all of that data. We're still processing, the state assessment data and all those kinds of things. So that kind of deeper level analysis, will come later in the fall.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Chair. I'm done with my questions.
Thank you, Vice Chair Bondo. Board Member Opperman.
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple questions and thoughts on intensives for the high school. To be clear, students who are placed in those courses are ones that have not received credit for a course, which means they have actually failed the course. And that's the only criteria for entry. Yes. Or the question, I guess the follow-up to that is if they are weak in a particular area within a course, may have passed the course. Are they included in that? And if a student gets a C and wants to accelerate a little bit into, let's say they're in basic math and they want to get into a college stream, can they access that? So it's filling gaps that individuals might have in programming. Is that any of that happening?
Yeah, we're working towards building consistency in terms of what's offered across the board at all 3 schools, because each school holds their own program right now. And that looks differently at each school. So at Portland and Deering, it's students who are recovering credits. So they did not pass their class. So that's why they're attending those credit recovery classes or intensives. Now that's different for the multilingual program. So those are programs more to just engage students who need that extra support to close the gap and help bring them up. So those aren't students that necessarily did not pass their classes. At Casco Bay, that captures everyone. So it's students who need to recover credits as well as students who just would like to continue learning and have an interest in learning. So there's programs that are provided where they can come and take part in it. Students that are just trying to excel. So there's that offered as well. Now, one thing that is true across alignment across the 3 schools is we do offer like an AMP math course that is for students who are coming into high school who, want to get that leg up and get into the advanced math class. So there's support in that class that is offered for all kids entering all 3 schools.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
I guess my comment then is, it seems that people would want to get into Casco Bay High School if only to have the option of additional programming that is not available to the other schools.
Thank you, Board Member Upperman. Any other questions from the board? All right, I see none. Thank you for that presentation, Deputy Superintendent. So now I'm going to move us into the report of the Secretary, and thank you, staff, for being here to answer questions. So first up, we have the consideration and action to approve the meeting minutes of September 5th, 2023. I look to the board to see if there's any corrections for the meeting minutes from September 5th. Just double check Zoom. Okay, so seeing no corrections, the minutes are approved as distributed. And now we're going to move into we want to do the board focus now. Okay, just double checking. Sometimes we put it at the end. So now we're going to have a Wabanaki and local Black history curricula update. Does anybody up here want to give some context before we introduce? Okay, great. Go for it.
Yes, very excited to do so. Excited. Last year was a big year in our multi-year work around developing and rolling out our Wabanaki studies units. So we're excited tonight to share some update on that progress, as well as on the continued development and kind of implementation plans for our local Black history work. So I'm excited in a moment to turn it over to our Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment, Jesse Robinson, to offer some framing. Very excited to have Fiona Hopper, our social studies teacher lead and Wabanaki leader, who has been instrumental in these efforts. I think, as many of you know, in terms of collaborating across the state with Indigenous leaders to help ensure the curriculum we're developing is truly in service and honoring of that history and honoring of the peoples whose land we share and occupy today. And really appreciate Jared Lank, who's joining us tonight, who has been an advisor in our project and is continuing to support our work. So excited to hear from all 3 of them this evening. So I'll turn it over to Jesse. Oh, yep. Sorry. I'm looking at the presentation.
Sorry.
Let everybody else look at it.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Tonight, we're going to give an update on the Wabanaki Studies and Local Black History curriculum that we're developing in the Portland Public Schools. So today's meeting aims and agenda is to give you an overview of where we've been in terms of curriculum investment, an update on curriculum development and implementation of these 2 curricula from Fiona, and then we're going to hear from Jared Lake. So thanks so much for being here, Jared. So just a quick note, some framing of where we've been. And I've spoken about this in the past, but just to bring everybody kind of on the same page. So in 2016, when the Portland Promise was hatched, we had pockets of excellence. There was no shared instructional vision. We didn't have a district-wide scope and sequence around what is taught. We had limited assessment coherence and no sort of common district priorities around teaching and learning. At that time, we had about $75,000 total district investment in curriculum. So that calculates to about $10 per student for all content areas, all grades. At the time, our academic team didn't have sort of deep content knowledge on the academic team. And so where are we now? Equity is really at the center of our work. We have clear priorities and strategies related to curriculum and assessment. We have shared instructional visions, including content-based instructional visions at our elementary level, as well as in other areas. We have high-quality curriculum. And at elementary in particular, we have every core content area has high-quality curriculum that teachers can use this year. And then additionally, on the academic team, we have people with deep content knowledge, such as Fiona Hopper. So this is just a reminder of what our priority is around strengthening core instruction. Just to, again, reminder, our theory of action is that if all students are exposed to relevant, engaging grade level learning with appropriate supports and scaffolds, they are more likely to master grade level content. And so you'll see one of our key strategies is around designing or adopting coherent, high quality instructional materials across all grade spans and content areas. And so what we're talking about today is the designing of one of those high quality instructional materials, which is our Wabanaki Studies or Black History curriculum. So just here are our instructional visions. The first one, you're welcome to click into these, is our overarching instructional vision, and would love to talk to you more about that and how that was developed. And then on the next slide, you'll see kind of some highlights from our social studies vision. And this is super inspiring to me, just to give a quick sort of snapshot of this instructional vision developed by Fiona and her team. It's really based in inquiry that our social studies instruction gives students the opportunity to explore relationships, to deepen their cultural humility, to develop critical thinking skills, and then to really use all of that to be to take civic responsibility and action about relevant issues in their lives, and to deepen their own identities within an understanding sort of larger systems. So again, really cool, amazing stuff. This is happening pre-K to 12. And so I'm about to introduce Fiona. I just wanted to say a little bit about her. It's a little bit loud outside. Hope you guys can hear me. So Fiona is our Social Studies and Wabanaki Studies coordinator. She is an incredible educator who deserves so much credit for where we are in this process of developing these two curriculum. When she was a teacher at Reiki, she recognized, and obviously there are people across the state that recognize this too, but she was one of the people in Portland Public Schools that recognized that we were not fulfilling our obligation to teach Wabanaki studies in the Portland Public Schools. And over the course of the last 5 years has built a system to collaboratively build a curriculum from the ground up, alongside and with guidance from Indigenous scholars, leaders, and community members, as well as our own teachers and leaders. This, I'm privy to what she has done, is an enormous task. And it's happening. Much of it has already rolled out in our elementary schools. I'm so proud of us as a district for supporting this work, and also inspired by the process that Fiona and her team has led. It has been collaborative, it has been thoughtful and intentional. And with that, I'm turning things over to Fiona.
Oh, hello, everyone. I'm Fiona, and I know many of you, but some of you are new faces. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the curriculum. It's going to be sort of the most succinct that I can make it, but I'm always happy to entertain further questions or share other links with you. There's a lot of documents that you can peruse. I just didn't want to assume that everyone wanted to read hundreds and hundreds of pages of Wabanaki Studies curriculum, at this meeting. Erin, you can, thank you. So for those who have been on the board for a while, this is not the first time you've heard me kind of give a little synopsis of the Wabanaki Studies work, but for those of you who are newer to the board, it might be the first time you've heard about it. So Wabanaki Studies is a legal requirement in the state of Maine. The law was passed in 2001, so you can do the math, right, over 20 years ago. And there has yet, to the best of my knowledge, been a school district who has fulfilled the requirements of the law. And Portland will be the first district in the state to fulfill and even exceed the requirements outlined in LD 291. And I feel super proud of that work, and to have gotten to work with so many amazing people, including Jared, whose poster you can see up on the slide. All right, are you looking at the same slide? Okay, great. That beautiful poster is a photograph that Jared took at the East End Beach in Portland, and it's a teaching poster that will be used in classrooms, elementary, middle, and high school, to really visually ground students in understanding that this is the Dawnland and what does that mean, and to unpack the language and the term. Dawnland is a pretty mediocre translation of the Wabanaki term that has a lot embedded in it. If you are curious to sort of read the whole backstory in detail of how this curriculum happened and how I ended up as a non-Indigenous person in this role, I wrote an article that was published in the John Dewey Society Education Journal called Finding a River View. There's a link there. It will give you more than you ever wanted to know about Wabanaki Studies. And then there's also another short article just to build your own background knowledge. At the top of the slide is a link to the curriculum overview. And in that link, you will find that there is sort of a brief description and a compelling question listed for each grade level, pre-K through 11. 12th grade does not at this time have a social studies requirement, so we are not planning or designing curriculum for the 12th grade. And the list of compelling questions was generated in part of a collaborative process with 13 Wabanaki advisors representing all of the Wabanaki communities in what is now called Maine. Though I will say that the curriculum itself has had upwards of 40 Wabanaki contributors, collaborators, advisors, which really, I think, speaks to the collaborative nature of the process. Right now, full implementation this year in elementary school is kindergarten and first grade, which are both seasonal units. So there's a fall component, a winter component, and a spring component. Those of you who have some experience in education know that our system is really not designed around seasonality. So even just that is a challenge for schools, getting children outside, engaged in developing relationships with their place of their living schoolyard, where their school is. And that in and of itself is a sort of small revolution in education, and having students really deeply engaged with the place where they are. Difficult to understand the relationship the Wabanaki people have with this place if students themselves are not exposed to and having time to develop a relationship with the place where they are every day. In third grade, it is the second year of a unit called Take Me to the River, which centers the Presumpscot River watershed. And that is a really local, kind of bringing the global into a local context. So students get background knowledge and understanding glaciers, in the formation of watersheds, in understanding what it means to be a water protector, 12,000 years of history of Indigenous people along the Presumpscot River, which for those who don't know, the Presumpscot River is the local river here in Portland that connects Sebago Lake to Casco Bay. So we had last year 550 third graders go visit the Gambo Dam site in Windham as a way of understanding the impact that dams have had in the Presumpscot, but also in rivers throughout the region and honestly throughout the country. And they connect that to the water protector activism in Indigenous communities locally, in Wabanaki communities, and also across what is often called Turtle Island in Indigenous communities, including Standing Rock, reading the book We Are Water Protectors, which some of you might be familiar with. And in 7th grade, we're rolling out a unit that is based in Facing History and Ourselves, which is a fantastic organization. You could Google it, out of Boston. They are really known for their Holocaust work and developing excellent Holocaust-related curriculum, but they've expanded and they build curriculum for all kinds of things. And there's now a Facing History curriculum requirement in 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th, 10th, and 11th grade. In 7th grade, that curriculum is called Stolen Lives, and it is the history of residential schools. The Facing History unit was developed for Canada, and so one of our own fantastic Portland educators, Kristen Leffler, who teaches freshmen now at Deering High School, adapted the Stolen Lives unit to have a Wabanaki focus, because actually many people from Wabanaki communities either went to the Carlisle Industrial School in Pennsylvania or to the Shubenacadie School in Nova Scotia. So the idea that it would be sort of delineated by borders doesn't really make sense for this region, because the Dawnland encompasses parts of Canada and the United States. Partially implemented this year is 2nd grade and 4th grade. 2nd grade has an expansive view and really takes Wabanaki studies and moves it into Indigenous studies, so that students understand that Wabanaki people are not the only Indigenous people in the globe. And you can understand in a student's experience, if we were sort of to overemphasize that, they might not understand that Indigenous people actually are everywhere, all across the globe. So 2nd grade has a focus on the Amazon River Basin and understanding the threats to the Amazon River Basin and the Indigenous people who steward that land. And 4th grade is a focus on expansive Dawnland history, really a deep dive into understanding 12,000 years of history in this region, which is a twist on the what has sort of formerly been the Maine study. There haven't been a lot of consistent things across the district, but the 4th grade Maine study has been sort of a mainstay. And that's kind of true throughout the state as well. So this has really adapted that unit to be not like in 1820, Maine was created, and to have a deeper, broader look that situates this place in its long history of Wabanaki inhabitation. And in 5th grade is a focus on the connections between what you might not know. You can learn from your 5th grader, if you have one, the connections between the United States government and Wabanaki communities. There's actually quite a long history of influence and relationship, particularly in the FDR administration and the relationship with the Passamaquoddy communities. So those are all in lesson set form, meaning that they're like a part of a larger whole. And the larger whole is sort of in development this year and will be ready for full implementation next year. And then we'll be at full implementation, fingers crossed that all goes well, by next year, with all grade levels having a Wabanaki studies / Indigenous studies curriculum, fulfilling, like I said, our obligation to meet the state law. And there's a couple of pictures of students at Gambo Dam last year, and students will be going to Gambo Dam actually next week. And the love for that river, I'm not sure Gambo Dam has seen that kind of love in a long time. So it was pretty awesome. And then the next slide is the field work that students in kindergarten did last spring, right here on the PATHS campus around maple sugaring. So the part of the winter component of kindergarten situates maple sugaring as part of Indigenous ecological knowledge, which is where it should be situated. And as part of their learning, students do a field work visit here to see the whole process of how maple sugar is made. And similar process in Black history. I think the Black history work began I've worked part-time for 5 years, so you have to keep that in mind with the time span. I believe we started the Black History work in 2020, and the Wabanaki Studies work began in 2018. So the Wabanaki Studies work is a little further along. The Black History curriculum includes both local, national, and diasporic history. So it's really trying to kind of get a balance of all of those things. The history that's the most difficult to find information on is, won't surprise you, the local part. That history of Portland and New England has been pretty well hidden and erased, though that's changing over time. So I'm spending a lot of my research time on that. However, there are some really amazing and excellent resources that already exist for both diasporic and national Black history. And that work is being led in a similar collaborative process with advisors and community members, and also 3 fantastic consultants, including Larissa Malone from USM, who's an education professor there. Unfortunately, she has just took a job and left USM, so she'll be missed on that work. The photo that you see gives you a sense of the books that we're reviewing. So the bottom shelf is all, this is at my house, all of the books for the elementary curriculum that have been reviewed by 3 Black history advisors, including Larissa Malone, Dustin Ward of the equity organization It Is Time, and Uma Mohammed, who's a Deering High School graduate. I believe she's a junior now at Bowdoin and was the former president of the BSU at Deering. And she has stayed on to guide the Black history work since she was a sophomore in high school, which is pretty amazing. So the Black history consultants have reviewed all of those texts and are helping me to sort of sort and organize which goes where. And as far as implementation this year, 8th grade and 10th grade are implementing 2 Facing History and Ourselves units, one called Choices in Little Rock that focuses on tensions between state and federal government and the Little Rock 9. And then in 10th grade, the unit is The Fragility of Democracy, and that is a focus on Reconstruction. And that will ensure that in one's early American history curriculum that you get a full exposure to the long and complicated and important history of Reconstruction. So that is a little bit of Black history work for this year, with hopefully, this is my question mark at the bottom, my hope is to have us at full implementation by 26, 27. But these creative processes are always a little hard to predict. And with that, I would love to introduce my colleague and friend, Jared Link, of the Mi'kmaq Acadia First Nation. Independent documentary filmmaker. He's actually doing the post-production work along with his wife, Abby Link, on the documentary film that will accompany the Wabanaki Studies curriculum, and is currently teaching the first Wabanaki Studies course at USM. Jared, welcome.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Try to gauge how close I'm supposed to be. This is my first school board meeting, so thank you for having me. I want to just say thank you so much to Fiona for inviting me to come here, and also for kind of shepherding this work and continuing it for the tribes. It's super important, and I think that my time here tonight is an opportunity for me to just kind of underline that importance from the tribal perspective and through a lens of lived experience. So I thought what I would do is kind of introduce myself, my relationship with education a little bit, and then talk about the moment that this is all coming and culminating for Portland, and also for the state, for the tribes, and how I see that. So I'm Mi'kmaq, Acadia First Nation, but I grew up outside reservation. I grew up in outside of community in Arundel, Maine. I was raised by my parents in Arundel, and my father, who was raised by his grandparents in Arundel. And I consider them my grandparents too, so I might use that grandparents, great-grandparents. But my great-grandparents moved from the reservation in the 1930s due to a number of factors. It was very common for our tribe. We're actually a border tribe, so we split across the Maine-Canadian border. They moved here to be immigrant workers, and at the time they were considered wards of the state. They moved at the time when tuberculosis and disease was very rampant in our communities in Nova Scotia. They eventually moved to Arundel, Maine, out of chance to work to sell baskets. So my family has a long history of selling baskets and making axe handles out of ash. And, my great grandparents didn't go to school at all. My great grandfather was actually a hobo for a majority of his life. He train hopped a lot until he met my great grandmother. My dad was given up for adoption during the infamous 60 scoop era of the Indian Child incentive program to put kids into adoption. He was not taught the language because we weren't allowed to practice our cultures or our languages until the late 60s, early 70s, legally. So he grew up in a world where it was very, black with better term, violent and dangerous to be native. He's told people most of his life that he's actually Hispanic instead of being indigenous. And it's a very common story across indigenous people outside of community. My father didn't graduate high school. He dropped out at a very early age because of the racism experienced in public education. So he has a very interesting relationship with public school. I, in a way, followed in my father's footsteps. I struggled a lot in grade school, middle school, and into high school, especially where it was actively, I went to the same school as my father did, K through 8, in a small rural town in Arundel. It was MLD, and experienced, at the time, our mascot was the Arundel Indians. So that came with its own unpacking for me. But more importantly, when I got into high school, I, to my knowledge, may have been the only indigenous person in the school. It was never taught. It was never talked about. And if my identity came up, it was constantly undermined and delegitimized by my peers and my faculty or teachers at the time. So I didn't feel like I belonged in school. I was pretty close to dropping out, and I actually was put on a IEP. And then in my senior year, came to school. I came to PATHS, and I did the music program, and it was really great. And I felt really accepted because music was kind of like my outlet for the things I was going through. And then I went to college reluctantly, despite my high school advisors kind of telling me that I wasn't college material, that I don't come from a family that would understand college or be able to support me or even afford it. Just kind of a lot of the same things that Native students run into today, trying to access education and higher education. I went to college and I was treated like an equal for the first time in my life in school. I went on to get a bachelor's degree from University of Southern Maine in anthropology and human geography. I minored in photo, and that's kind of how I got into documentary filmmaking. And I went on to get a master's degree at USM in public policy. And in my time there, I focused a lot on Wabanaki access to higher education. And that's kind of where Fiona and I's paths started to cross a bit. I found myself advocating on campus quite a bit as a student, and then as a graduate assistant, and then later staff member of the University of Southern Maine for fulfillment of tuition waiver obligations for students and access to higher education pathways so they could get degrees and outreach programs. And I just felt like it was really important for the university to step up as a public university to try to fulfill those obligations and then create those opportunities for Native students. I don't remember exactly how we crossed paths, but I was really happy to be introduced to Fiona in the work. I was asked to be on the tribal advisory board for Portland Public Schools. Oh, I remember now. It was one of my friends that worked for Portland Public Schools knew Fiona and introduced us. And I knew a number of people on the tribal advisory board. And for the past, couple-ish years, I've been really engaged with the development of the video side of the curriculum. And it has gone hand in hand, I think, simultaneously with a lot of the work that's going on for tribal representation and education in general. Like Fiona said when she introduced me, I'm currently teaching. I'm a staff member at the University of Southern Maine with Catherine Color Institute. I'm a research associate with a tribal program. I work for the Capacity Building Center for Tribes and Child Welfare. And we focus a lot on Native epistemology and learning for child welfare inside of tribal nations. And I'm also teaching the first Wabanaki curriculum for USM through the anthropology department. And the biggest thing that I see right now is that with this, the importance of this is that it creates a sense of belonging for the Wabanaki students, like my class, and also by relation, and I would assume through into the K through 12 public school arena, because like I didn't have any of these offerings as a student, and it kind of disincentivized me sharing my story and relating to other students. But being able to teach the class at USM firsthand, I've noticed that I've had a number of students come up to me and feel safe and have communicated that that they're either Wabanaki or their parents are, and they took the class specifically for a couple different reasons. One is that they are of that culture and feel like they have a sense of belonging and that they can fit in there and that they feel represented. And the other half is that they're dealing with the repercussions of assimilation tactics, like I shared about my father being put into child adoption, where they come from grandparents who were put into adoption that have been disconnected from their culture and they want to learn more. And then the other side of this, I see a really strong moment of opportunity and interconnection with multiculturalism, because I've had the opportunity to have students that share very similar paths into the American education system of, being asylum seekers or refugees or kids of immigrant workers that want to learn about the indigenous people of this place. And it is a common thread and connection point for them to understand place. And it's been really powerful. Last week, I did a guest speak with Jackie Evanson, the president of USM, in her class. She's teaching on leadership, and I facilitated that class with Carol Wishcamper, who was on the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And we had a number of students in the leadership class come forward and share their stories. One student was from North Africa and talked about the cultural loss and the conflicts going on there. Another girl shared her story of her parents moving to Maine in 2017. Her parents were fleeing the Philippines because of the war on drugs. And there was these common through lines of connection to trying to hold on to cultural practices and belonging, and also how do you retain your identity inside of systems such as, public school. So I know I've kind of gone on about myself a little bit, but I just am really thankful for the opportunity to come up here and speak a little bit to the curriculum development, because I see it as a tribal member and someone who did not experience this type of education as a child and then into my adulthood. I see it as a form of relationship building and repairing of, connections between institutions of knowledge and education and the tribes, because of the kind of harsh relationships and perspectives that Native people might have of institutions of education. Like Fiona touched on with boarding schools and things like that, I have students in higher education reference their family stories with it all the time. So I think that this work has a multitude of benefits that is beneficial and sets Portland Public Schools as a best practice and example of how the state can repair those relationships and uplift the one of the most disadvantaged demographics in the state, the indigenous people of this place. And also, I think, to Fiona's point, I just want to circle back to really quick, a really great component in the multicultural realm of things is the form of land-based education and the gleaning of Native epistemology for understanding place in a deeper context with seasonality, relationship to animals, ecology, and those things like that. That legitimizes in children's eyes what they learn at home, right? So I grew up in a house like that, and I was invalidated my entire life. And then I became questioning my identity. And I see now, I feel empowered to be able to say, oh, I know all about that stuff, but I didn't know that anyone cared, right? And I feel that I see that in students now, and I think that it's super exciting. And another, just one little thing I want to touch on before, I give it back to, I don't know, any of you are back to the board, is that I'm expecting my first child in the spring. And I live in Portland, and I'm really excited to know that my kid can go to school feeling accepted and welcome into a community that respects Indigenous people. Coming from a family who has such a hard history that is shared amongst so many Indigenous people in this place right now. So I'm just really grateful for that. And thank you all so much for having me. Let me speak for a little bit. So thank you.
we can take questions if you have any.
Beautiful. Before I look to questions, just want to thank you both for that awesome presentation. I just am so proud of our district in this area, and I feel like it's a gift, Jared, to have you working alongside of us on this. And I just got goosebumps on goosebumps. So thank you. And yeah, just so much gratitude to you, Jared, for being here tonight, for sharing about your story, and Fiona for the ways that you have stewarded this work for so many years with so much integrity is just breathtaking, and I'm super grateful. So who would like to ask some questions? Yes, Representative Ellis.
Hi, thank you, Chair. And thank you so much. That was freaking awesome. My question is around the high school implementation. High schools handle social studies and ELA very differently. So I know at Casco, we have like required courses all 4 years, but Portland and Deering, you can choose between AP and honors. Will the curriculum be implemented into all of those classes? So students, no matter what courses they choose, will be able to experience it, or is it going to be different depending on the class?
That's a great question. The curriculum right now is sort of living in social studies. Now, that does not mean that Wabanaki Studies is exclusively a social studies content. It really is best served when it is integrating arts and science and all of the ELA and all of the content areas. However, in our system, we sort of have to pick a box for something to live in. So it's living in the social studies box for right now. And particularly in the high schools, middle and high schools, once things are departmentalized, it will be in social studies. And so at Casco Bay, you have Mr. Bernstein, former teacher of the year, who designed an expedition that really integrates most of the major themes of the Wabanaki Studies curriculum in a expeditionary format, which is slightly different than how the other two high schools will typically deliver things. So there's curriculum that's designed for the more traditional approach of early U.S. history in 10th grade and U.S. modern world history in 11th grade. But all of that same content will be delivered here at Casco Bay, perhaps just in a slightly different format because of your model. Did that answer?
And so at Deering and Portland, like I know at Deering, you take AP Human Geography freshman year. Will you be receiving this curriculum through that class?
Yes, there's a case study that's being built by one of the 9th grade teachers at Deering who teaches that course. And it will actually, I'm gonna like nerd out about it. I really want to talk a lot about it because it's amazing, but the short version is it's kind of looking at the history of the paper industry and paper mills in Maine and connecting that with Indigenous land rights.
So thank you so much.
That's awesome. Sorry, I was like, oh, right. I have to ask people to talk. Yes, Board Member Bryden and then Board Member Santiago.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Like, this is so exciting and wonderful. I have twin 3rd graders, and on my kitchen counter right now are the permission slips for them to go to Presumscot River later this month. So excited. Anyway, so my question is to do with the Wabanaki Studies slide. Am I seeing that there's nothing for 6th graders?
That is the case. Yes. Okay. And that is really, that has the potential to change, but there isn't any curriculum designed for 6th grade because we're moving towards a more global focus for 6th and 7th grade so that students can kind of study each region of the world with a similar format, but all the different regions of the world, so they don't get to North America until 7th grade.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you so much.
Board Member Santiago, and then I'll move to Board Member Figdor.
My question was kind of connected to another question about the AP option at Deering and Portland. I know in AP US History wasn't listed on the 10th grade option, but I was wondering because that's both the early US history and modern US history put together, how that could be implemented in that, but because it is a very like rigorous like lot to deal with course, if it would be.
Yes, absolutely. You know, the expectation when we roll these out next year in high schools is that all students who are taking history classes, the required core history classes are getting the Wabanaki Studies curriculum, even if it has to be delivered in a slightly different format based on your particular course context.
Thank you so much.
Beautiful. Board Member Victor and then Vice Chair Bondo.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Fiona, and thank you so much, Jared. Jared, I really appreciate your sharing your story with us tonight. It was incredibly powerful for me to hear and to focus in addition on the connections you made across our student body, and about the potential to help kids feel like they belong in our schools. That was just so powerful to me. So thank you so much for being here and for sharing your story, and of course for all of the work you've been doing over the past few years with us. I had an actual question on our Black History curriculum, and I know that part of the reason why this work has been the work both on Wabanaki and Wabanaki studies and Black history has been done so intentionally, and that is why it's been done so well. But I'm wondering about the timeline for the Black history work. I know in terms of rolling it out to more grades, there is a question mark. I'm just wondering what's needed to have more certainty about the rollout across our grade spans, and are more resources needed in order to make that happen? Or is it just that this work really takes time to do well and to do intentionally? And that's my only question. So again, I just want to say thank you so much for this work.
The answer is both of the things you said. Yes, there are some resource constraints, certainly. I only work part-time, so there's only sort of so much that I can do in a part-time schedule. And that's a constraint. And then it does legitimately take time to build relationships and trust where trust has been so badly broken. So, we could throw all the money in the world at, not that we have it, but if we did, at any of these curricula, and that wouldn't magically make it happen. Now, that does not mean that we don't need more resources for Black history, and we could certainly use that, and that probably would move things along a bit and create a bit more certainty in the timeline. And on the other hand, temper that with the reality of relationship building and trust building, which is really at the center of cross-cultural collaboration.
Absolutely. And I hear that.
I won't say no to money.
Perfect. Vice Chair Bondo and then Board Member Russell Butter.
Thank you. Good to see you, Fiona. Hope you're doing well. So glad to see you. And thank you for the great work, and thank you, Jared, for your story. That's just empowering me to see how strong we're standing while we have our culture more valued around the district. So I have a couple of questions. I just want to appreciate the students because they really raised great questions. I had a few from just like that. So I got a few answers from the question. And I just want to have a clarification because I look at the implementation of the local Black history for the 23-24, if I'm not mistaken, is that we have 8th to 10th grade. And I just wonder if there is any specific reason why we have the last year of the last grade of middle school and the sophomore year of the high school, instead to have just high school or just middle school. So it's going to be one specific curriculum, or it's going to be two different curriculums?
So there are two different, the reason we have highlighted 8th grade and 10th grade is because there are curriculum ready resources available through Facing History and ourselves that teachers can use now. And those curriculum need to be like everything. It needs to be sort of adapted and changed, and teachers will do their thing to make it be the right fit for the Portland schools. And all of that curricula can benefit from more local context building. But those two, Reconstruction was highlighted because that came up again and again in student experiences as something that they were not getting enough time to learn about, and that sort of early U.S. history stopped at the Civil War and then resumed again in 11th grade. And then there was sort of never enough time to cover Reconstruction. So it kind of got short shrift at the end of 10th grade and not maybe enough time at the beginning of 11th, because teachers are trying to cover an immense amount of content in a short, a year seems long, but it's not when you're talking about such a huge topic as early U.S. history. So the Reconstruction unit was really highlighted so that we could make sure that students were learning about that particular time period. There's also a teacher at Portland High School who is one of the veteran Black teachers of the Portland schools who is working on further curriculum resources for 10th grade and 11th grade that balance both national and local historical resource or contexts. And then in 8th grade, the Choices in Little Rock curriculum was chosen for similar reasons, that it covers a lot of really important history, and that curriculum doesn't have to be written by me. It already exists. So a lot of the sort of the slowdown in the curriculum is that there aren't bodies of research already available. I can't click on something and find it. We're really writing it ourselves. And there was one of the Wabanaki advisors to the Wabanaki studies curriculum said, you're doing this where there isn't an academic discipline to draw from. And that's starting to change. Jared is at the forefront of that, but there isn't, it's not like a biology curriculum where, you have long lists of resources and a long tradition of an academic discipline to draw on when developing the curriculum. So the local side of the local Black history curriculum is where one really has to spend tons of time on researching the relationship building part I mentioned, and then also the sort of background research and development of those resources that really they don't exist. And there is a former teacher working on some of the components of the elementary curriculum this year. You saw some of the books that were on that shelf. So she is working to develop the elementary units. They're just not ready for implementation at this point in time. And that's sort of similar for the middle school. We had someone who was working on it, and then that person was unable to complete the work. And so we're hopefully going to find somebody else to be able to take up the middle school. Did that answer your question, Mickey?
A little bit. Thank you.
A little bit.
I will go. Yeah, I have a little more straight questions about the local history here. And I know we have, when I look at the ratio of our teachers, we have mostly white teachers. And I just want to understand if there is any challenge or pushback about teaching the Black history. So are some teachers just, accepting to do it, or we're going to have some professional development? Or they're going to use that curriculum and using their own methodology of teaching it without any bias? I just want to look at that big picture and be honest with that. If there is any pushback from some team of using it.
We definitely would not implement that curriculum without professional development. I have not received or heard any particular pushback from teachers about teaching Black history. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist somewhere. I just have not heard it myself directly. But even a teacher who's ready, a white teacher who's ready and willing to do that, needs some high quality professional development before they would be good at delivering that curriculum. And then I think Jared has some things to add there.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm really glad you brought up this point. It's something I wanted to touch on that I kind of went over when I was talking earlier. This has been a big problem in the implementation in LD 291 for Wabanaki curriculum across the state. What we have found in looking at that, there's a couple different things. One is the fear of getting it wrong becomes a barrier for teachers to teach it in the classroom, which ultimately leads to a form of erasure for those cultures in the classroom because no one's taking up the mantle of responsibility to implement it. So I know that I want to like highlight Fiona's point about relationship building and repairing, because in order to get it right and instill that confidence into the teachers that may not be from that culture, it takes time and takes an investment in that relationship and understanding at a human level. And then second to that, I would say to the earlier question about the substance matter that Fiona was referencing, I just want to say that in the Indigenous, or at least in the Wabanaki understanding of education and higher education and literary sources and citing and all that fun stuff, it's an intergenerational, multi-generational approach to create intellectuals of an oppressed people, right? And it takes efforts like this to create that capacity in that workforce. We just now, as Wabanaki people, are creating our own intellectual canon where we are able to create our own research that is vetted and proven legitimate by other experts that are Indigenous, right? That is a very new thing. Until previously, most of these efforts were done by white academics that were not part of the culture, and they were vetted by non-Indigenous people. So this is a new phenomenon where you're creating a canonical literary source, and efforts like this, like the Wabanaki curriculum and the Black History curriculum, equip students of the future to be able to create that canon for themselves culturally and represent themselves and stand up when curriculums are incorrect. So I just wanted to touch on that a little bit because I feel like it's an important part of this conversation moving forward for representing those people and creating a seat at the table for the conversation in general. So I appreciate your question about that.
Well, thank you. My last question is, Fiona, for the books that I saw for the Black History curriculum, are we using African-American authors, or are we using European as well? Or is it a mix of authors?
All of the books that are on that shelf are written by either African-American or African people, authors. So I'd say predominantly African-American authors, but there are some books written by authors from various countries throughout Africa as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair. I'm done.
Thank you, Vice Chair
Fiona.
Bondo. Yes, Board Member Russell-Letter.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to echo heartfelt thanks, Fiona and Jared, for all of your work and also the relationship building. Like I just really want to highlight the work on development of trust, like how huge that is in this work, and know that takes time and patience and effort. So thank you for that, and thankful for all the other Wabanaki leaders that contributed to develop this work over time. I just wanted to share a brief reflection from my own third grader, who was in one of those pictures, I believe, in the trip to the Presumpscot last year. She's a fourth grader this year at Presumpscot School, and just really have been so in awe of the sense of place, and teaching the rest of her family when she comes home about, salmon migration and just learning about the Presumpscot River and the meaning of that. And also, I was just thinking about when we went on a trip to Nova Scotia and Prince Edward Island this summer, and she really was recognizing, it was amazing, Indigenous language and history we saw in like museum and public spaces. Like she really made this rich connection across the region, really an understanding, across borders, that some of what she learned, there was connection in the community there. And that was really special. And I'm just really excited from what you laid out, Fiona, to know that as a fourth grader, she's going to continue this learning, and just got really excited to see that my current eighth grader going into high school, along with middle school and high schoolers across the district, are going to be able to receive this rigorous content, and just so thrilled about that. And then just lastly, just thinking about Maine studies myself as a fourth grader in the 80s, I'm just so thrilled to know the direction we're moving in. And I really hope we will be a leader and a model for other school districts around us. And so thank you for not only creating the change here, but hopefully creating a movement for this work across the area. So thank you.
Board Member Upperman.
Thank you, Chair. Board Member Russell, would you sing the 16 county song sometime? I know I know, but this is very rich. This is fantastic. I got a piece. I was a science teacher for 40 years. Okay. So, and was working with this summer with the science curriculum coming up, what, not the curriculum, the standards. And so there's some questions I have about that. But I was out at Peaks Island when they were doing the salmon. And I, at the level of engagement, the science that was going on because of the way it was done, and the art that was the visual, the observation and recording of visualization was really, really exceptional, and enthusiasm. And there were some interesting kids in that class, so it was just really good. Kelly Hassan let me come in. It was tremendous. In the summer work that I did on the Maine state standards, which will be ultimately where we will have to look and measure and judge our success in learning all this, besides the anecdotal stuff, which is rich and never to be lost. There were some real issues I know in the science one, and I'm aside from activities, the worldview, the basic views of nature and all is very different. Yeah. And I don't think sometimes I didn't understand as much, but one of the couple of people who were there were from Penobscot Nation, and it was very interesting to hear that. And my question is, I see in the elementary that you're able to integrate more with the science and all. How is that going to happen? I mean, you're it's going to get put in a silo in high school, which is always annoyed me as a science teacher, that you have the silos. How can that will that be able to be brought as a real measurement of learning in the sciences? I mean, literature and art, and I could see, but it's a tough one. And it's, it has to do with your traditional, yes, European science piece. But what's your thought on it? Either of you, all of you.
There are some great science teachers who are taking on Wabanaki studies in the high schools and are kind of breaking down that artificial barrier between social studies and science. And certainly open to developing more and more integrated curriculum. I mean, in my mind, that's the best. Kids learn the best when there's integrated curriculum, and we should be continuing to move in that direction.
It's a cosmology thing, though, really.
I just talked about this in my class right before this. So this is perfect timing.
I take it.
Yeah. So I think it's a great, a very first thought that I have about this is that I agree with you that oftentimes the way Indigenous perspectives on, our understanding of ecology and place and science have traditionally been delegitimized because they are associated with, storytelling. And mm-hmm. Robin Kimmerer in her book, Bring Sweetgrass, reconciles that in her identity quite a bit. And I think that one example that I know of that works really well for people to understand contextually how deep ecology of Indigenous people relates to place, harkening back to land-based education and things like that, is that we talked for about 45 minutes in my class earlier. We were covering settler colonialism, and we ended up talking about wildfires. And we ended up talking about how wildfires are the product of a land preservation and conservation effort that extinguished all fires, right? We did not allow wildfires in this country, on this continent, for over 100 years, and now we're dealing with the consequences of that. Simultaneously, the rights of Indigenous people were stripped for doing controlled fires in that way, and now they're being begged for their insight and how to retain this and how to fix this problem. And we see ourselves in this opportunity to uplift traditional understandings of nature and place, because at the end of the day, people that have existed in a region for 12,000 years have lived in somewhat of a deep ecology with place and understand the intricacies of their relationship to that place. The way that they transmit that information across their culture and across to other people is specific to their culture, but that can transcend in the classroom by creating, these equivalencies and understanding that they're different perspectives, but the the outcome is the same. And I think that what we can do, at least in the curriculum work, is uplift those examples of traditional stewardship, right? Concepts of how, if any of you have a background in cultural anthropology, the term would be functionalism, right? Like how a cultural component functions inside that culture and inside of that ecology. So in indigenous cultures, ecology and deep ecology would have a strong functional component. And I think that can be uplifted in something like the Portland Public Schools curriculum at that higher level, where you're saying, you're moving away from the biases that could be instilled in the students of saying, and like I said, Robin Kimmerer gets to this point really well, being a storyteller and being a scientist, and that's not true in indigenous cultures. They're the same. We can say these oral traditions, these practices, these history, storytelling can actually be implemented. The knowledge from that can be implemented in this Western lens through this science STEM, background. And I think that that's like a really good point you're bringing up, because we do face that as a challenge when it comes to changes in cultural lenses and approach. So.
Well, and I was just hoping to make sure that happened within the curriculum. I have some. I'm the last one, but I have questions. And it's about Black history, the Black education. Did you want to say something as well? I'm sorry.
I want to let Jared go because I know his pregnant wife is in the car.
She should be in here.
I'm happy to take all questions and follow up with you. I think, would that be okay?
I think that would be wonderful.
Okay, great. So I'd love to take questions and then make sure that I follow up with
That's fine. I think I've actually, my question is about the African American curriculum and in incorporation in that. Bye-bye.
Okay, wonderful.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Because the issue is when I went to high school in the 60s, and I didn't get World War I and II because last quarter we did Black history. So I did the, post Civil War era, and then it was the time of Jonathan Kozol and that aspect of the civil rights movement and bringing awareness. So I guess, again, the science piece, this was the same conversation we had with are you going to attempt to put the local and national other history of Black history into the sciences and the mathematics, other than just saying, hi, this guy designed this gin, that kind of thing. So I don't know how you're going to do it, and how will it also be on, and as a scientist, as an assessment, what's the purpose behind that assessment in the science field?
I do know that there are a lot of educators in Portland that are working on this interdisciplinary approach. I also wanted to say, once we have some of these curriculum in place across all schools, those kinds of innovations just naturally begin to happen, and people make those connections across disciplines as well. So I'm happy to talk further with Fiona about that particular question, but right now I know that it's happening. There's not a Black history integration with the science, because the way that Fiona was saying that it's kind of in the social studies box at this point.
Yeah, but the assessment's going to be there somewhere. That's the question I have. So
yeah,
just my teacher.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Another just quick segue is the Policy and Curriculum Committee meeting next Thursday, the 28th on the evening. One of the things we'll be looking at is the instructional vision and how this work is kind of tied to that, and obviously a long road of building towards, kind of implementation of that experience consistently across the system. But that's an anchor for this frame, and just another opportunity for some more discourse around this next Thursday evening.
Beautiful. Great connection. And Board Member Bilyeu has our last question on this.
Thank you. So I just want a little bit more clarity on the presentation. So with the Black History update, are was what you said just the update, or were there like no other points to put on the slide? Because I'm having a hard time finding the books that you're talking about that are specific for the curriculum.
I believe that the books that are put on that slide, the picture of all the books, that's sort of an illustration of the review process that's happening right now. So they are reviewing books that are on the bookshelf, and I'm happy to talk to Fiona and see if I could get you a list of the books, or she could follow up with you about the process in particular.
Oh no, it's okay. I just thought there was a list of books because or somebody had mentioned that. And then I just wanted to. So, who are the folks from Passages, which is the organization at Portland Museum of Art? Are those the folks that are made up of the Black History Advisory Group?
I know that Passages is an exhibit at Portland Museum of Art that is that is very interconnected with the work that we're doing with the Wabanaki Studies. I believe that was on the Wabanaki Studies slide. Is that correct? Oh no, it's on the Passages. Okay. I will ask that question and follow up with Fiona about that. I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that question.
That's okay. Can you tell me who is or what is the Black Advisory Group?
Fiona talked about the 3 advisors that she works closely with, who are the consultants. And then there's a larger advisory group that we definitely have the names of all of those people, and I can definitely get you that list, in the next.
And was that the organization from Boston? Is that one of them, or is it?
No, I think the organization from Boston she was talking about is Facing History in Ourselves, and they provide the curriculum that we're using in 6th through 11th grade.
Okay, but so the advisory group is 2 people that she's working with that are teachers?
No, there's 3 advisors that we pay to support us, but then there's additional educators from Portland that are on the advisory group, and additional community members that we also have paid in the past to be on our advisory group.
Okay, I would just like some more information on what that group is, or what the makeup of that group is, and what their specific work entails.
Sure.
And then I don't know if you would be actually able to answer this, but I remember in our policy and curriculum meeting, somebody brought up that no, I don't think you would be able to answer this. I'll just follow up with Aaron to see if it's within the Black History curriculum, because I wasn't sure actually. Actually, maybe you can tell me now. Sorry, I'm all over the place. So in the meeting, we talked about, I think there was a South Sudanese book that was being taught in a class or in a curriculum. Would it be within this curriculum? Okay, so that's a whole separate.
Yeah, that was a review around as part of actually an EL this was now a couple of years ago, as we were piloting some ELA curriculum, and it was review out of the one of the books that was being used in the ELA curriculum, if I'm remembering correctly. Is that right, Jesse? Mm-hmm. Yep. So no is the short answer to this.
Okay, but so sorry to ask even more on that, but would the books that would be considered for something like that be within this curriculum, like moving forward?
I think there's certainly connections across. That was in the ELA curriculum, and the Black History is really for the social studies sort of scope and sequence. But obviously, we're building more towards interdisciplinary connections. So, I would say there's a possibility of that, but I don't think that's been decided specifically.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, those were my questions.
Okay,
Beautiful. Thank you, Board Member Biliu. And I think your questions and others and mine also just kind of like recognize that the Black Studies is a little bit more nascent than our Wabanaki Studies curriculum. So I just like really look forward to continuing to make space to learn more about. And I think just like as much as the board members were engaged, I'm sure that same thing is happening on the student level. So that's really exciting to see. But I think, yeah, as many details as you can continue to bring around Black Studies, that would be awesome.
Okay, great.
Beautiful.
Great.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. No, just want to obviously Fiona and Jared, but want to appreciate Jessie for her leadership in supporting shepherding not just this work, but broader work, in terms of our strategic priorities of ensuring high quality curriculum and assessments and to ensure all kids have access to grade level material has been a huge part of our strategy. And as we know, is a clear research based, kind of approach to ensuring we accelerate student outcomes. So thank you, Jessie.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much. It's 8:06, so we've been at this for 2 hours. We're going to take a 5-minute break. And so let's come back at 8:11. To move us into old business, which is the consideration and action to approve proposed changes to policy IJJ, the selection of educational materials. And as a reminder, we worked on this both in committee and had a workshop at the board level and had the first read at the last board meeting. So is there a motion to approve these proposed changes? Thank you, Board Member Russell-Better, Board Member Opperman with a second. Any questions on the motion? Just double check Zoom. Seeing none, I'm going to move to public comment. Any public comment on this motion? All right, so I'm seeing none. I'm going to close public comment. Any board discussion? Board Member Russell-Better?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to quickly thank Meg Rooks for her work on this and, kind of bringing it back to the newer formation of the board that wasn't kind of around during the first development of the policy, and Deputy Superintendent Townsend's work to kind of bring it back to us and go over it so that we really could understand it. And I'm just really appreciative of that and really excited to move this policy forward, and we'll be happy to vote for it. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Board Member Russell-Better. Any other discussion from the board? All right, seeing none, let's do a roll call vote.
Just before we do that, I also wanted to just shout out Meg for her leadership with our librarians in the district and vision and kind of commitment to all of our kind of core values and goals of the Portland Promise, and ensuring our work in our school libraries across the district align with that, and that we have strong policies to support. So thank you, Meg. Thanks for hanging out and supporting the board in this process. So with that, excited to do the roll call. So Member Biliu.
Yes.
Vice Chair Bondo.
Yes.
Member Bryden.
Yes.
Member Opperman.
Yes.
Member Russell-Better.
Yes.
Member Youssef.
Yes.
Member Ellis.
Yes.
Member Himon.
Yes.
Member Santiago.
Yes.
And Chair Lentz.
Yes, so the motion passes unanimously with those present. Board members Figdor and Grant were not voting, and the students voted with the majority. So with that, I'm going to move us on to new business, which is our first read of a proposal for girls' high school hockey co-op.
Well, we'll just hold here. We're going to do, after we close, we'll do a brief workshop and have a short presentation about the co-op proposal, as we did for the boys hockey in the spring.
Great. So you want, sorry, Erin, just to be clear, so we're moving on to personnel and then we'll do, okay, great. All right, so we're going to have the consideration and action to approve the personnel items listed in the agenda. So the election of teacher candidates, probationary. Barrett, are you going to speak to this? Beautiful.
Yeah. So we have just 3 probationary teachers for your approval first up.
Great. Do I have a motion to approve these personnel items? Thank you, Board Member Bryden. Is there a second? Board Member Opperman. We do not have public comment on personnel items. Are there any questions from the board? Let me just double check Zoom. Okay. So any general discussion, not about an individual from the board? Okay, seeing none, then by roll call vote, please indicate whether you are in favor of these personnel items, probationary teacher candidates.
Member.
Go ahead.
Yep, sorry. Member Billieu,
Yes. Sorry.
Vice Chair Bonda,
Yes.
Member Bryden,
Yes.
Member Opperman,
Yes.
Member Russell Better,
Yes.
Member Youssef,
Yes.
Member Ellis,
Yes.
Member Human,
Yes.
Member Santiago,
Yes.
and Chair Lentz.
Yes, so the motion passes unanimously with all those present voting for the motion and the students also voting with the majority. So we're going to move on to our next personnel item, which is the consideration and action to approve election of one-year only teachers.
It's actually just 1 year only teacher.
Okay. Sorry,
because there's plural. So just 1 year only for today's.
Beautiful.
Approval.
So do I have a motion to approve that personnel item? Thank you, Board Member Opperman. We get a second from Board Member Youssef. No public comment. Are there any questions or discussion from the board? Okay, I see none. So let's do a roll call vote, indicating whether or not you're in favor of these personnel items.
Member Billieu,
Yes.
Vice Chair Bonda,
Yes.
Member Bryden,
Yes.
Member Opperman,
Yes.
Member Russell Better,
Yes.
Member Youssef,
Yes.
Member Ellis,
Yes.
Member Human,
Yes.
Member Santiago,
Yes.
and Chair Lentz.
Yes, so the motion passes with all those present voting in the affirmative. The students are voting with the majority as well. So I'm going to move us
Excuse me, Chair. Could I just make a note about personnel, which is after discussion with Dr. Scallon, what we'll do at this point, now that we're sort of caught up from summer hiring, is we'll move to do personnel just once a month, if that is acceptable to the board.
That sounds
hopefully
wonderful.
Just save everyone a little time on your agenda. So with that, I think the next time we would bring personnel would be October 3rd, is it 5th? What is the 17th? So a month from now. Okay. Not the first of the month, a month from now. So there you go.
Okay. Beautiful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Beautiful. So with that, I am going to ask for an adjournment. Oh God, I just lost my language. Hold on. Sorry. Oh, Board Member Opperman?
May we adjourn?
Is there, you want to move? You're moving?
I move.
Okay, she's so moved. Is there a second? Thank you, Board Member Bryden. So much movement in this room. All those in favor, please? All right, so the meeting is adjourned at 8:23.